So our next speaker, though, is an economist with a background in social entrepreneurship and a passion for food. She's the founder of Kitchenette, which is the UK's first ever incubator for food entrepreneurs. And she's gathered together some of London's top restaurant owners to mentor her protégés with amazing results. London is fast becoming more delicious because of her work. Please welcome Cynthia Shanmugalingam. Who the mystery man is that's sitting next to you.
Yes, that's something we can do while we're waiting. So this is Joel Braham, who is the founder of The Good Egg, and he's one of the sort of stars of the portfolio that Kitchenette's worked with so far. He has very graciously agreed to take some time out. He's opening a restaurant in a few weeks' time, so he's taking time out of his busy schedule to be here and to sort of tell the story of how we work with entrepreneurs.
Hooray!
Sorry about that. So, hello. We're very excited to be here to be talking about Kitchenette and the work that we do supporting food startups. I am the founder of Kitchenette, and we're an incubator for food startups in London.
And as Cynthia said, I'm Joel. I'm the founder of The Good Egg. We're a new restaurant in London, and we serve up all-day brunch and a menu from the Middle East and California.
We met 2 years ago when Joel joined the first Kitchenette incubator program cohort. He was one of 6 young restaurateurs and food startups that we co-founded and helped to launch. And this is the story of how Kitchenette launches food businesses.
And how I went from an idea about pots of eggs to opening the first of 3 restaurants next month.
I started Kitchenette in January 2013, after maybe 6 months of planning and thinking. My family is full of kind of doctors and people with serious jobs, academics, but I always sort of wanted to do my own thing. And I was itching to leave, quit my job and do something when I met a girl at a night market. My friend Sam was running this night market in Hackney in London called The Long Table. And I met a person there from San Francisco who lived across the street from this organization in the Mission District called La Cocina. She was evangelical about the work, and the idea blew my mind. We talked over some Taiwanese buns or something about how street food and pop-ups in London were really taking off. And alongside crowdfunding and social media, they were changing the economics of how to set up a food business. We were excited about doing something like that in London, and that's how we got started. I guess central to the thinking behind doing Kitchenette is that food has so much to offer. It isn't just a big employer, some of the figures up there show, but it helps to animate our cities. It helps to bring us together. There are places where people celebrate birthdays and fall in love. And yet, food is relatively under-supported. You look at another industry like technology, any given night in London, there's a meetup or a fund or an incubator, but food, despite its sky-high failure rates, had almost nothing. And so we set up Kitchenette to kind of tackle those things. One of the things I thought when we were getting started was save a job in a pub when I was 18. I had basically no experience of the industry at all. And so the way that we got started was to talk to as many restaurateurs as we could. I wanted to sort of make an index of what it might take to become a successful restaurateur, and I Googled email addresses for some people, and some friends of friends introduced me to others. A young recent graduate called Clarice Hilton came to work with me for a summer, and we went to meet as many as we could. We interviewed restaurateurs, some of whom were successful and some of whom actually weren't successful. That's not what we told them. We didn't tell them that, why that's why we were interviewing them, but that's true. To kind of develop a sense of what success would look like. And they all agreed on a few kind of key things. One was that practical advice and help was invaluable. Another was that finding a pitch or a site in London was a nightmare. And finally, that raising money wasn't just confusing, it was kind of emotionally difficult. all sorts of people we spoke to had different kinds of starting points, from chefs to people who started in street food to people who started in management consultancy or worked in banking. But they agreed on those few things, and every single one of them, agreed to become a mentor. So we designed Kitchenette to tackle the barriers they told us about. We constructed a 3-month program, and we took applications online. And we said this: in return for a small stake in your business, if you're interested in starting a food business, we'll offer you 3 main things. We'll offer you a place to start selling. We spoke to lots of top London street food markets, and they agreed to give us a pitch. We'd help you get a pop-up site. Lots of different landlords talked to us and said they'd help us get our entrepreneurs pop-up pitches. We'll get you mentors and classes. So every week we met over dinner, and a different expert from somewhere or other in London would come in and talk about their experiences of setting up a food business. And finally, we'd help you pitch for money and investment. We helped our entrepreneurs to put together business plans. We did a demo dinner at the end of the program, and we found dozens of interested investors interested in helping fledgling young restaurateurs to get started.
So that's when I heard about Kitchenette. I've always loved cooking. My first jobs were in pub kitchens when I was 14 or 15, washing up, and then moving on to cooking, and I never really stopped. So instead of food, I went down the engineering route and had a steady job in a sort of sensible 9-to-5 office job. But I was always torn between sort of the sensible job and following the dream. But the urge got stronger and stronger, and I was bursting full of ideas for recipes and restaurants and businesses. And I was walking around Berwick Street Market in Soho one day, and I hit upon an idea for a street food stall. So I was doing this silly diet where you had to have eggs every morning, and I couldn't find the breakfast I wanted on my way to work, so that was the idea. Eggs in pots with different toppings on your way to work.
This is some of the text from Joel's application from when he applied. And he was one of 80 applicants we had that first year. We had some Beijing pancakes in there, some Korean tacos, some Italian wood-fired sandwiches. He sent us this video, and the concept at that point was called Buenos Huevos, which we weren't sure about. He liked this Batman apron. He sent us a photo of that alongside his application. And there were a few things that needed a little work, but Joel definitely had some of the key things that we were looking for. On the basis of our research and talking to restaurateurs, we developed a kind of restauranteurs DNA, and the things that we were looking for. And Joel had all of them. He definitely displayed a kind of nerdiness, a kind of obsessive capacity to be thorough about researching recipes or sourcing or anything. There was a desire we could see in him to be original, to subvert people's expectations, and the passion for food he had sort of shone off him. He had an eye for whether something looked good or whether it didn't. He had evidence of delivering lots of stuff and being focused on execution. We thought if he were hosting a party, we'd probably have a good time. He had a sense for the business side, and most importantly of all, probably a willingness to learn and an openness. And all of those things were more important, and that's a philosophy, I guess, for Kitchenette than the original idea. He ticked every box, and so we began alongside 5 others in January 2 years ago. We put together a little committee of taste made up of chefs and restaurateurs, and they approved our selections. We made them our offers, and then we were off.
So the first thing Cynthia and Kitchenette got us to do was Feast, which is this street food market in London with about 4,000 visitors. That was after they suggested we change the name. So I got my old school friend Alex to help me, prepping hundreds of mini portions of these egg dishes, shakshuka and huevos rancheros. And we loaded up the car with pots and pans, set up all the tables and equipment, writing up all the blackboards, and it was crazy. We'd never done anything like it before, and even though it was just a small street food market, there's so many different elements, and it wasn't like doing, a shift in a top London restaurant where you've got your section and you just look after it, and as long as you do that, you're okay. With the street food store, you're the restaurant designer, you're the head chef, you're the health and safety guy, you're the pot wash, and all the details have to be good, otherwise it just doesn't work. So it was stressful and scary and unfamiliar, but we worked really hard and did everything we could to get some really great food out to people who ended up coming to us ahead of some of the big sort of restaurants that were either side of us. And we sold out, which was great. So it gave us a really good sense of having achieved it, and just to get through it that first time was amazing.
Feast was the first of a whole bunch of different food gigs that we helped the Good Egg get, including cooking for an important guy at number 10. Some big markets, some not so good markets. And the part of the process of doing lots and lots of events like that was helping us to figure out what the right model was for the Good Egg. One of the things we started to figure out was that the Good Egg just never sold as many as the burger guy or the hot dog guy on markets. The food didn't really suit that kind of style, and Joel didn't seem to like the weather or the endeavor of that setup. So we had some finance mentors come into Kitchenette and build financial models with our entrepreneurs and give them a sense of what different approaches to food businesses could look like. As he met more and more different people, some in street food, some in restaurants, he began to evolve a clearer idea of what he wanted to do. He wanted to do a restaurant, he came to us and said. He wanted to build an egg empire. And that was a big value for Kitchenette and for me, is going where the entrepreneur's energy is rather than trying to lead them somewhere.
Yeah, so Shamil Thakrar, who's the founder of a restaurant in London called Dishoom, spoke at Kitchenette dinner one night, and it was something he said that made me know that I really wanted to open a restaurant, which was, when you walk into a great restaurant, someone's thought about everything, every element, how you walk in, what people say to you, everything. And he said this thing, which was, you can smell the give a damn, which I keep seeing in the program and things like that as well. And that was it. That felt like something worth grafting for, this place that people could love in different locations, something that could have the potential to grow and be a good business. So that was the idea, to have a great business and a great restaurant. But some of the mentors from Kitchenette were quite brutal. Heard a lot of, an egg restaurant, that's never going to work. And if you want a restaurant, just go out and get one. So it became quite clear that, you can't just go and ask everyone's opinion. You have to be confident and clear in what the thing that you're doing. Make sure you go out and go get the right thing from the right person. And I went to see Iqbal Wahab, who's the founder of the Cinnamon Club. And he said, why haven't you quit your job yet? You're doing two things at once. So I did. One day I just went into the office and decided to quit. And I went full-time on opening a restaurant.
When Joel told me that he had quit, we felt this change of pace, like the momentum had to step up and we had to move faster. Another Kitchenette mentor called Charlie Cowrie, who runs a restaurant called Flatiron, had come in and told us about how doing a pop-up for him had been transformative. He'd been able, on the back of it, to get a prime site in the middle of Soho in London and to raise money in a way that he couldn't have imagined before. And so we were thinking, for a restaurateur that isn't a big-name chef, that doesn't have a lot of money or connections behind them, doing a pop-up or a kind of demo restaurant would be transformative to be able to help them kind of get started. So we needed to find somewhere to do that. I rang around and I talked to some people, and then by a stroke of luck, one came up. It was this disused old Citroen car garage off a really busy street in London, and it was beautiful and large and airy, and it already had a kitchen in it. And we could have it for 2 months during the very hot, sticky summer. So Kitchenette agreed with Joel that if we go in on it with him, if he ran it as the Good Egg Cafe during the day, and we'd rotate others in the evenings, we'd also have a bunch of Kitchenette talks and classes, and we'd run it together.
Yeah, if I'd known what was coming, I would have never said yes. So the garage was the biggest step up we could have made in terms of scale. Running one-off events and running a restaurant every day was totally different. And we struggled with everything from managing staff to systems, but we had to learn really fast how to run a service, doing daily orders, cooking to order, managing everyone, managing costs and everything. So we hired a head chef, a really good head chef, Raju, who taught us so much. He was calm and collected in the kitchen, organized and efficient, and a general manager called Chris to run front of house, which he gave us a pep talk every morning and really raised our game in terms of service and front of house.
I didn't show you that photo of the two of us, but that's how difficult, that was a bad day during setting up for the garage. But it did get better. So while Joel and the chefs at the Good Egg were sort of navigating how to run that, we'd managed to put together quite a good program for the summer, and some big-name chefs and restaurateurs had agreed to do some talks and classes, and all of that was kind of getting a bit of attention. So we were in Time Out, and I think Monocle came, and Wallpaper, and the Evening Standard, I think, and Stylist, and Food Edited, and they were covering Kitchenette, and while they were at it, they were trying Joel's food. It's one of the examples, I think, of how Kitchenette's ability to draw people into the idea of starting a food business could be used, could be leveraged to help our entrepreneurs. One of the journalists who came said that Joel had the best shakshuka in London, better even than Otto Lengi, which is a big compliment. And more than that, you could just see it. He was running a restaurant every day, and although he was panicking, the food was brilliant, the coffee was delicious, and people were really noticing.
So at one of the talks, Cynthia introduced me to Oded, who was a former lawyer and a pastry chef from Israel, where brunch and sharing food is really big. And so when I think back to the first sort of breakfast burritos and street food we did, it's a bit embarrassing. You know, they were under-seasoned, the wraps weren't good, and the conversations between Oded and Cynthia and myself really opened us up to thinking about what style of food we wanted to do. Part of the process of doing event after event, day after day trading, was getting all kinds of painful feedback, realizing what worked and what didn't work, and constantly thinking of how we could improve things. What would we want on that plate if we were sitting down to brunch? And would eggs work for dinner too? That was one of the big questions, actually.
I introduced Joel and Oded because we thought, as we were going to make the transition from a pop-up to a real restaurant, it was exciting to think about Joel cooking more food from his Jewish roots. Since the beginning, different elements of the incubator had helped change Joel's cooking, and you could see him evolving and researching and being obsessive as he is about the recipes and dish ideas, and sending out emails to the rest of the team late at night. Part of the role of Kitchenette is to help to see the restaurant within the people that we work with and to kind of steward it into being. And I and some other Kitchenette mentors have been to Israel and to New York and seen a new wave of restaurants influenced by simple Jewish cooking from people's childhoods, with artisan ingredients, this sort of light, bright, fun food culture of Tel Aviv that seemed to chime so well with Joel's hearty brunches cooked with gusto. And as Joel and I talked about the food ideas he loved, we realized that the good egg could be more than just eggs. That Jewish food, weirdly, has eggs in it, like a motif that runs from Iraq to Atlanta, from Yemen to Italy. There are eggs in pickles and sandwiches and breads, and maybe that could be the heart of an idea behind a full-scale restaurant.
So the more we go around restaurants and the more we cook for different people and immerse ourselves in food, the easier it became to sort of spot people who care as much as we do and can tell when some food has a lot of love gone into it. We think that's really special, and that's the approach we take to every dish on the menu. It's not quite as interactive as Sam's food, but I'd like to tell you about one of them now. So we tried some delicious kremeskis at a restaurant in London, these sort of hot, salty, crispy little cubes that you dip in aioli, and made up with leftovers or cuts that weren't used for anything else. So we learned how to smoke and brine brisket to make pastrami by trying over and over again until we got it right. And now we make our pastrami with really amazing beef short rib from Warren's Butchers in Cornwall. We brine it for 10 days, add a dry rub, smoke it over beech, apple and cherry wood, and then sous vide it for 14 hours to get the perfect texture. We then mix in homemade sauerkraut, sour pickles, mustard, cheese curds with some beef fat and bechamel and loads of herbs, and then triple coat them in pretzel breadcrumbs. And voila, you get a Reuben kremeski, sorry. So we were becoming more sure of our ideas and more confident in running the pop-up, and it felt like we were ready to open a restaurant.
So the hunt for a site was on. Kitchenette had all sorts of property developers and landlords and councils trying to help our young restaurateurs to find sites. We found that food, and exciting food, is increasingly seen as vital for regeneration and retail projects in London. I guess because it is something that animates areas, and that was the main lever we had to get meetings with people that had sites. So Joel and I got our suits on, and we started pitching for sites all over London.
And we saw so many sites, and you see the first one, and you've got no idea what's an A3 license, is a 7-year lease good, how much what does that rent mean for the business? But it became easier and faster, and we had the Kitchenette mentors there who'd been in the restaurant trade for years to weigh in and help figure it out. And then we saw this site, which you can see here, and it was perfect, so we put an offer in for it. It was really close to where I lived, but we thought through it all carefully together, rewriting the pitch, redoing the model, and the whole team fell in love with it. And one day we got a call to say, offer accepted. So Oded and I had enough cash for the deposit, but we needed to raise the rest.
That's where the Good Eggs business plan came under scrutiny. I'd like to say that the work we did on this together was a labor of love, but it was actually much more like angst and hard work, and it was really tricky. We had to work hard on all the financials, on figuring out the offer, on figuring out the ideas for the design, and how to value the company. None of those were things that Joel knew about before he started Kitchenette. Joel and Oded pitched to dozens of investors who were interested in Kitchenette's entrepreneurs, but in the end, the boys decided that the right thing for them was crowdfunding.
Yeah, we wanted to give our customers and friends a chance to be part of it. It felt right for what we were trying to do. So Cynthia turned Kitchenette's office into the Good Egg sort of crowdfunding war room, and we researched every other successful restaurant project, all their valuations, their terms, their rewards. We had a strategy for every person and how to target them, and we went out to meet as many as we could, send emails to those who couldn't. A friend of mine made the film, and we knew that food had to feature prominently. We thought that if we showed people what we wanted to cook for them and our plans for the site and this community that we were using of amazing craftsmen, then they'd understand what we were trying to do. And we did it. We raised the money. We hit 100% in 4 weeks. That's me at a concert. And yeah, by the end of 8 weeks, which was the end of the campaign, we reached £260,000, which was a very weird day. We didn't know it was coming. And then it sort of snowballed, and we could hardly believe it. Investors from Brazil and India and all kinds of other places, people that we'd never met before.
And now the money is in, the designs are almost done, and Joel's about to open. I'm still involved. I'm now the creative director at Kitchenette, and I'm on the board. But the team is big now and growing all the time.
The Kitchenette mentors are all still involved. One gave me his list of everything to do before opening. I was looking at just before I came on stage. Another's a board director. And Kitchenette gave us the platform, really, to find our team, advisors, business partners, directors. My friend Alex, who did that first market with me, has taken over all of our sourcing and supplier chain, and he'll be a chef in the restaurant, and Oded's now the operations manager. So it's all these people having faith in you and giving you the confidence to do it, which has really made the difference to us.
This year, we hope Joel's going to come back to speak to our next batch of entrepreneurs. We're taking on 20 more. We're doing a new investors dining club that gets crowdfunding to a few more of our entrepreneurs. And others in Joel's year have been voted best street food vendor in London, another's opening up a pizzeria in South London this year, another's running an award-winning pop-up in Manchester. And the thing about the story of Kitchenette and the Good Egg is that it's really about each individual. This is about Joel, and there's something in the spirit of him and something creative in the process of going from a person to a restaurant. And the great joy of Kitchenette is that it's a privilege to be part of that. And my job is to corral all of the offers of support and help and advice and money and property into the best start for starting a food business that we could possibly imagine. Thanks very much.
So here you are. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Or stand up. Yeah. So, I mean, a wonderful story, and great to see how Kitchenette is actually operating and working, and to hear one of its first stories. Now, we've had a question from our audience to you, Cynthia, which is actually, how do you earn money from this?
Great question. I mean, incubators the world over sort of have a number of different models, and when we set up, we sort of stole our business model from a tech incubator in the US called Y Combinator. They take small stakes in their businesses. They don't take any cash off the entrepreneurs because they don't really have any when they're getting started, and they hope that eventually one will IPO for a lot of money. And we lifted that idea, and we started in the same kind of way. But the thing is that food doesn't really have the same economics as the tech sector. So there aren't really $19 billion food companies that were only started 3 years ago. That just doesn't really happen. So we do take small stakes in the companies we work with, and that's a sort of valuable piece for the long run to help us be focused on how do we build successful businesses that really grow, but also in every event we do, in every pop-up restaurant or whatever, we split revenues with our entrepreneurs. And
we're talking about here, the whole thing is design, actually. I mean, your whole project is the design of an incubator and every aspect of a business being designed. But also, I mean, you were talking about how every little detail needs to be right. So what about actually the role of designers, more conventionally perhaps, within that process? And is that something that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we now have a whole bunch of different designers and architects and interior designers and branding people and whatever who are interested in food businesses at different stages. And I guess I sort of feel like the role of Kitchenette is to operate one step before some of those people can traditionally engage,
Yeah.
which is to kind of figure out what the core of the idea, what the soul of the idea is itself. And then those experts and professionals can help to sort of see that be stewarded into being.
And you'll know that you've been following over the last 2 days that we are all here looking at what challenges design and our creativity can be best put to. And I guess you've both got particular passions. So if what design can do is looking at something, is there something that both of you would like to suggest?
We're doing a lot of work with schools at the moment, the issue of children going to school hungry, not really being educated about nutrition and things like that. So I think that's a campaign to challenge that would be an excellent use for design.
Cynthia?
Also, one of the things I'm always interested in is jobs. You know, jobs in the food industry can be really difficult. There can be lots of underemployment, underpayment, lots of illegal labor, and the industry has such a capacity to provide people on really low incomes with great work. So I'm interested in how design can help create great, fun, exciting, rewarding jobs for people that help them move from, washing dishes to becoming restaurateurs.
That's a fantastic end to this session. So thank you very much, both of you. It's been really, really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.